Hey everyone, and welcome to the first of a small series of videos on some of the lesser known characters from the Gwent card game. If you've ever played Gwent without having read the books, you likely ran into quite a few cards that made you raise an eyebrow, wondering who this guy is or what her story is in the Witcher world. And I get these questions often enough, so I decided to go over 3 each time in a short video to tell you their story. Some barely get a mention, others have a page or 2 going for them, and yes, I'll do my best to get all of them done before Thronebreaker happens, don't worry. So, without further ado, let's start with my favorite faction, Scoia'tael.
Oh, how lovely it burns.
Schirrú was an unusually tall, over 6 feet in fact, dark-haired and very handsome half-elf, and the cause for quite a few headaches throughout Geralt's travels. While this particular adversary was only ever a peon in the grand scheme of things, that didn't make him any less dangerous. When Schirrú started working for Vilgefortz, we don't exactly know. All we know is that at the time of meeting Geralt, he had been working with Vilgefortz for years, and as we know, Vilgefortz's only objective was to capture Ciri, which, in turn, made that Schirrú's objective as well. And to that end, the half-elf was sent to shadow Geralt, who was also trying to find Ciri, of course, which eventually led Schirrú to a detective agency in Dorian by the name of Codringer and Fenn. Geralt had paid these 2 detectives to dig up a few things. Whatever they could find on Rience, another one of Vilgefortz's pawns, slightly higher up the ranks than Schirrú, and of course, how he might ensure the safety of Ciri. After Geralt's visit, Schirrú initially meant to interrogate the detectives, but before he could go about doing so, Rience sent him a different order. Grab whatever information you can, kill the detectives. And so, Schirrú and 2 of his cronies, called Millet and Nazarian, went to pay Codringer and Fenn a visit. Codringer, careful as he was, pretended to be someone else, but Schirrú didn't buy it. He stabbed the man to death, then moved on to find Fenn, Codringer's dwarven companion, who managed to kill Millet before Schirrú could get to him. When he did, he kicked the dwarf to the floor before something on Fenn's desk caught the half-elf's eye. A picture of a young girl who looked suspiciously like Cirilla of Cintra. Schirrú grabbed the picture and any documents near it, then doused Fenn in rum before setting the entire place on fire, and he certainly didn't rush that process. He quite enjoyed the slow death of the dwarf. Schirrú then delivered the documents he'd stolen to Rience at the Sly Fox Inn in Carreras. Our half-elf friend and the wizard talked for a while until they eventually decided to kidnap the false Ciri and present her as the real Ciri to the Emperor of Nilfgaard. This would hopefully throw everyone off the search for Ciri so they could try and find the girl in peace. No sooner said than done. Our trio of Schirrú, Rience, and Nazarian left for Bruges, and on the 4th day after the new moon, kidnapped a young girl from a red brick house with brass scissors on the door. Rience forced her to drink a magical elixir, and a mere 3 days after the war had started and Thanet Isle pitted mage against mage, Schirrú and Nazarian appeared at the fortress of Nastrog and reported to a man called Pitcairn Godivron. They told Pitcairn, a Nilfgaardian officer, that they had come with orders from Rience and Cahir to deliver Cirilla of Cintra to them. However, they handed him the false Ciri, of course. Having said that, it didn't take long before Schirrú was right back on Geralt's trail, this time not to shadow him, but to kill him. He'd volunteered for the job, in fact, on account of his apparent family or friends in the area. Geralt was spotted, though it's more likely that he'd simply wanted the joy of torturing the Witcher to a slow death. Because Schirrú didn't go to his family and friends, no, he instead approached the criminal known as the Nightingale, and he paid the man handsomely to deliver the Witcher into his hands, dead or alive. They planned to set a trap in Belhaven, as Geralt would have to travel through this small town to reach the druids he was trying to find. Though, incidentally, Geralt hadn't known he'd have to travel through Belhaven to get there. Geralt had no idea where the druids were until he found out about Schirrú's plan. Because he did find out about the ambush, of course. And so a counterplan was crafted. Geralt, Cahir, and Angoulême would try to catch Schirrú off guard. Pretending to have killed Geralt themselves, the group found themselves at the Rialto mine, where Schirrú was supposedly holed up. And while things seemed to go well initially, that didn't last long. After meeting Schirrú and continuing the facade of having killed Geralt of Rivia, the half-elf suddenly grabbed Angoulême and told Cahir and Geralt to drop their swords if they didn't want the girl to die. To make matters worse, Nightingale and his bribed Nilfgaardian cronies showed up just at that moment, and Geralt's little group didn't stand a chance. Schirrú had recognized Geralt from the very beginning. He just didn't let on until he had Geralt's Witcher medallion in hand. The fool believed that Witchers could only cast signs if they had their medallion. And now that he had the Witcher exactly where he wanted him, he intended to torture him to a slow death using burning tar and chains. Though we never found out how that would have turned out, because just as Schirrú pointed his finger at the tar kettle, it exploded. The Free Slopes resistance was attacking the mine. Chaos ensued as Nightingale's Nilfgaardian allies were butchered, and Geralt and his team only barely managed to flee. Schirrú and Nightingale also managed to make it out alive. Schirrú still wanted Geralt dead. Geralt still wanted Schirrú dead. Their paths eventually crossed again in the druidic forest of Mirkwood. Unfortunately for Schirrú and his gang, Geralt had made fast friends with the roaming knights of Toussaint. And knights don't take kindly to bandits. They scattered the half-elf and his allies, who fled further into the forest. A mistake. The druids had had enough of these interlopers and sent a gigantic tree monster to round them all up and carry them to a clearing in the middle of the woods. Once there, they were all stuffed into a wooden wicker cage, Schirrú included, of course. Before Geralt could do much of anything, the cage was set on fire, and Schirrú, the half-elf, burned, along with the Witcher medallion he had taken from Geralt earlier. Schirrú burned, cried, screamed, and died.
Manticore venom should do the trick.
Many years before we first meet Geralt of Rivia, he had already been traveling the world for some time. During one such travels, he found himself in the forest of Broccolon, domain of the Dryads. As is well known, Dryads only sleep with men to reproduce, no romance involved. Unfortunately for Geralt, as a Witcher, he can't have children. He must have only just started the Witcher life, however, as he did in fact sleep with a Dryad. Her name was Morenn. Not just any Dryad, but the daughter of the ruler of Broccolon, Ethna. No children came of it, of course, and Geralt left. When he returned to Broccolon years later, accompanied by Ciri, he was told what had become of Morenn. She had perished on the border of Ruban in defense of Broccolon. Ethna could barely recognize her. Morenn's face had been trampled by the hooves of the attackers' horses. In Ciri, Ethna recognized destiny. Geralt had not given Morenn children, so he now brought Broccolon a child of destiny who would become a Dryad. But Ciri did not wish to become a Dryad and stay in Broccolon. Destiny denied Ethna, who hoped to replace Morenn, though in her heart she surely knew Morenn could never be replaced.
Drink this, you'll feel better.
Deep in the forests of Broccolon, you will find Scoia'tael, the rejuvenating hot springs spread across the cave system, a place of healing and rest. Scoia'tael was the home of Aglaïs, the Dryad in charge of healing in Broccolon. She was well known for her remarkable skill in healing, and so this was her main charge, alongside two other Dryads, Cirsa and Fauve. When Milva visited Broccolon while Geralt was healing there, Aglaïs summoned her to the springs to talk to the Witcher. Milva, who had been sneaking Scoia'tael into Broccolon for a while now, was rather upset that Aglaïs seemed completely fine with showing Geralt Milva's face. Aglaïs, however, was known for her reluctance to talk. When she spoke, it was in short sentences and quite to the point. So she weathered Milva's screaming calmly, then noted that Geralt was not just any man, but Gwynblade, Witcher and friend of Broccolon. Geralt wanted news of the world and his loved ones, and only Milva could deliver such news, so Aglaïs had sent for her. That didn't quite placate Milva, but instead she continued screaming at the Dryad, which earned her an interruption at last. "If you're going to shout," interrupted the Dryad calmly, "let's go deeper into the forest. He needs peace and quiet." Milva calmed down, asked some questions Aglaïs could not answer, and the Dryad noted that all she knew was that Geralt needed healing and the rest was not her business. She then asked Milva what she should tell the Witcher, and of course, Milva told her that both of them could go to hell, to which Aglaïs only answered, "As you wish, I shall not compel you," and went on her way, still entirely unfazed.